Before we begin this story, I want to share something personal with you. There are very few people in Hollywood who make you believe that kindness is not weakness. There are even fewer who prove it through decades of quiet actions rather than loud words. Keanu Reeves is one of those rare souls. What inspires me about Keanu is not his action sequences or his box office success. It is the way he treats people when cameras are not rolling. It is the stories that crew members whisper about him. The way he gave up millions from his Matrix salary so the special effects team could be paid properly. The way he rides the subway like everyone else. The way he keeps space between himself and female fans in photographs out of respect. The way he has endured unimaginable personal tragedy and still chooses gentleness over bitterness. Keanu lost his best friend River Phoenix to an overdose. He lost his daughter who was stillborn. He lost his girlfriend in a car accident shortly after. Any one of these tragedies could have broken a person completely. Yet Keanu Reeves did not become cynical. He did not become cruel. He became softer. He became more present. He became the kind of person who notices when someone on set is struggling and quietly does something about it. That is what this story is about. It is about a moment when someone was struggling, a moment when the world expected perfection and a human being could only offer her broken best. And it is about what happened when Keanu Reeves noticed. This story is inspired by real events, expanded and imagined to explore the deeper truths beneath the surface. So let us begin. The morning light came through the studio windows in pale golden sheets, falling gently across the polished floor where markers had been taped in precise positions. There was a stillness in the air that felt almost sacred, the kind of silence that exists only in the moments before creation begins. Somewhere in the distance, a door closed softly, and the sound echoed longer than it should have. Ana de Armas stood at the edge of the set, her fingers resting lightly against her stomach, feeling the flutter of something she could not name. It was not quite fear. It was not quite excitement. It was something in between, something that lived in the space where hope meets doubt. She had been in this industry long enough to recognize the feeling, but today it felt heavier somehow. Today the weight pressed against her chest in a way that made each breath feel like a small act of courage. The crew moved around her in practiced rhythms, adjusting lights and checking equipment, their voices low murmurs that blended into a kind of music she had learned to find comfort in. But comfort felt distant this morning, unreachable, like something she could see through glass but could not touch. Ana had arrived at the studio 3 hours before her call time. This was not unusual for her. She had always believed that preparation was the foundation of confidence, that if she worked harder than everyone else, she could outrun the voice in her head that whispered she did not belong. That voice had followed her from Havana to Hollywood. It had sat beside her during every audition, every rejection, every small victory that never felt quite earned. Most days she could quiet it. Most days she could prove it wrong through sheer determination and relentless effort. Today was not most days. The production she was working on was called Ballerina, a spin-off of the John Wick franchise that would establish her as a leading action star. This was the opportunity she had dreamed about for years, a chance to show the world that she was more than a beautiful face, more than a supporting character in someone else's story. The studio had invested over $100 million in this film. The pressure was immense. The expectations were even greater. And the choreography was the most complex she had ever attempted. For the past 6 weeks, Ana had trained for 8 hours every day. She had worked with the best stunt coordinators in the business. She had pushed her body beyond limits she did not know existed. Her muscles ached constantly. Her joints protested every morning, but she had never complained. She had never shown weakness, because in this industry, weakness was remembered long after strength was forgotten. The scene they were rehearsing today was the centerpiece of the entire film. A 4-minute continuous fight sequence that would be shot in a single take with minimal cuts. It required perfect timing, perfect positioning, and perfect execution of over 40 individual moves. Every mark had to be hit within inches of precision. Every strike had to land close enough to look real but far enough to be safe. There was no room for error. Ana had rehearsed this sequence over 200 times. She knew every beat by heart. She could perform it in her sleep. At least, that is what she had believed until this morning. The stunt coordinator was a man named David who had worked on some of the biggest action films of the past decade. He was brilliant at his job, but impatient with imperfection. He expected excellence because he had seen what excellence looked like, and he had made it clear from the beginning that this sequence would define the film. No pressure, Anna had joked during their first meeting. David had not laughed. Now standing on her mark waiting for the rehearsal to begin, Anna felt her phone buzz in her pocket. She knew she should ignore it. She knew that focus was everything right now. But something made her reach for it anyway. Some instinct she could not explain. The message was from her veterinarian. Anna, I am sorry to tell you that Elvis has taken a turn for the worse overnight. We are doing everything we can, but you should prepare yourself. Please call when you are able. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. Elvis was her dog, a rescue she had adopted 5 years ago when she first moved to Los Angeles. He had been her constant companion through the loneliest years of her life. He had slept beside her bed during the nights when homesickness felt like a physical illness. He had celebrated with her when she got the call about Blade Runner. He had been there for every triumph and every failure, loving her exactly the same regardless of what the world thought of her. And now he was dying, and she was here, miles away, unable to hold him, unable to say goodbye. Anna closed her eyes and took a breath that felt like swallowing broken glass. She could not fall apart. Not here, not now. There were over 100 people on this set whose livelihoods depended on this production staying on schedule. There were millions of dollars at stake. There were expectations that could not be disappointed. She would mourn later, she would break later. Right now she had to be professional. The assistant director called for everyone to take their positions. Anna walked to her opening mark, her legs feeling strangely distant from her body, as if she were watching herself from somewhere far away. The actor playing her opponent took his place across from her. The cameras rolled for the rehearsal take. David raised his hand. And then he dropped it. Action. Anna moved into the first combination. Step, pivot, strike, block. Her body knew the movements intimately, but her mind was somewhere else. Her mind was in a veterinary hospital beside a dog who had given her unconditional love when she had nothing else. Her timing was off by a fraction of a second. Her positioning was wrong by mere inches. But in fight choreography, inches are everything. Her elbow connected with her scene partner's face. Not hard enough to cause serious damage, but hard enough to draw blood. Hard enough to stop the entire rehearsal. Hard enough to make everyone stare. Cut, David shouted, his voice sharp with frustration. What happened? You know this sequence. You have done it perfectly 100 times. Anna stood frozen, watching the medic rush to her scene partner, watching the blood drip from his nose onto the pristine floor. The whispers started immediately, spreading through the crew like poison. She is not ready for this. She is going to get someone hurt. They should have cast someone with more experience. Anna heard every word, and each one confirmed what the voice in her head had always told her. She did not belong here. She had been fooling everyone, including herself, and now the truth was exposed for all to see. What she did not know was that someone else was watching, someone who understood exactly what she was going through, someone who would change everything. In the shadows at the edge of the set, Keanu Reeves stood silently. He had arrived a day early for his cameo, wanting to observe the production before his scenes. He had watched Anna's failed rehearsal with careful attention, and he had seen something that no one else seemed to notice. He had seen himself. Keanu Reeves had learned to read pain in the spaces between words. He had learned to recognize grief in the slight tremor of hands that others mistook for nervousness. He had learned to see the invisible weight that people carry when they are trying desperately to hold themselves together. These were not skills he had chosen to develop. They were skills that had been carved into him by years of loss, years of watching the people he loved disappear from this world in ways that made no sense. Standing in the shadows of the set, watching Ana de Armas struggle through another failed rehearsal, Keanu felt something stir in his chest. It was not pity. Pity was what people offered when they wanted to feel better about themselves. What he felt was recognition. He recognized the distant look in her eyes, the way her focus kept slipping to somewhere far beyond the walls of this studio. He recognized the mechanical quality of her movements, the way her body was present but her spirit was elsewhere. He had worn that same mask more times than he could count. The second rehearsal had gone worse than the first. Anna had missed her mark by nearly a foot, her timing completely off, her usual grace replaced by a kind of desperate rigidity. David, the stunt coordinator, had stopped the take after only 15 seconds, his frustration barely contained beneath a professional exterior. The whispers among the crew had grown louder, less careful about being overheard. Keanu watched Anna absorb each whispered criticism like a physical blow. her shoulders curving inward slightly more with each passing moment. He remembered what that felt like, the sensation of shrinking in public, of wanting to disappear into the floor while dozens of eyes watched your failure. He remembered standing on sets after Jennifer died, after their daughter Sirena was stillborn, trying to function while his entire world had collapsed. He remembered directors growing impatient, producers questioning whether he could complete the film, colleagues offering hollow encouragement that somehow made everything worse. But he also remembered the few people who had shown him something different. The grip who had simply sat beside him during lunch without saying a word, offering presence instead of platitudes. The makeup artist who had covered the evidence of sleepless nights without asking questions, protecting his privacy with quiet professionalism. The veteran actor who had pulled him aside and said, "Take whatever time you need between takes, I will cover for you." These small acts of kindness had saved him during his darkest years. They had taught him that compassion was not about fixing someone's pain. It was about making sure they did not have to carry it alone. The director called for a 15-minute break, his tone carrying the sharp edge of frustration that signaled trouble ahead. Keanu watched Anna walk quickly toward her trailer, her head down, her arms wrapped around herself, as if she were cold despite the warmth of the studio. He noticed that no one followed her. No one checked to see if she was okay. Everyone was too busy discussing what to do about the problem rather than considering that the problem might be a person in need of help. Keanu made a decision that would change everything. But first, he needed information. He approached one of the production assistants, a young woman who seemed kind and observant. She recognized him immediately, her eyes widening with a mixture of surprise and starstruck nervousness. "Excuse me," Keanu said softly, keeping his voice low so others would not overhear. "Do you know if something happened with Anna today? Before the rehearsal, I mean. She seems like she is carrying something heavy." The production assistant hesitated, clearly torn between respecting privacy and wanting to help. Keanu waited patiently, his expression open and without judgment. Finally, she spoke. "I overheard her on the phone this morning. It sounded like her dog is really sick. Like dying sick. She was crying but trying to hide it. Then she just pulled herself together and went to set like nothing happened. I wanted to say something, but I did not know what to say." Keanu nodded slowly, feeling the weight of this information settle into his understanding. A dying companion. The impossible choice between personal grief and professional obligation. The loneliness of suffering in public while pretending everything was fine. He knew this story intimately. He had lived it. "Thank you for telling me," he said to the production assistant. "You noticed something important. That matters." The young woman smiled, surprised by the sincerity in his words. Keanu walked toward the craft services table, his mind working through possibilities. He was not scheduled to film his cameo until tomorrow. Technically, he had no reason to be on set today, no official role to play. But official roles had never mattered much to him. What mattered was doing the right thing when the opportunity presented itself. He prepared 2 cups of tea, remembering from a previous conversation that Anna preferred chamomile when she was stressed. It was a small detail, the kind of thing most people forgot immediately after hearing it. But Keanu had learned that small details were often the most important ones. They were the difference between generic kindness and true attention. They told someone that they had been seen, really seen, in a world that often looked right through people. He walked to Anna's trailer and knocked gently, 3 soft taps that would not startle someone already on edge. "It is Keanu. Mind if I come in?" There was a long pause. Keanu could hear movement inside, the sound of someone quickly trying to compose themselves. When Anna's voice finally came, it was thick with the residue of tears she was trying to hide. "Of course, come in." Keanu entered the trailer and found Anna sitting on a small couch, her phone clutched in her hand, her eyes red despite her obvious attempts to wipe away the evidence. She looked embarrassed, caught in a moment of vulnerability she had not intended to share. Keanu simply sat down across from her, placed one of the tea cups in front of her, and said nothing. The silence stretched between them, but it was not uncomfortable. Keanu had learned long ago that silence could be a gift. Most people rush to fill quiet spaces with words, with advice, with attempts to fix what could not be fixed. But sometimes the greatest kindness was simply sitting with someone in their pain, letting them know they did not have to perform, did not have to pretend, did not have to be anything other than exactly what they were in that moment. Anna wrapped her hands around the teacup, absorbing its warmth. Her shoulders gradually began to relax, the tension slowly releasing from muscles that had been clenched tight since morning. Finally, she spoke. I am sorry you had to see that out there. I do not know what happened. I know this sequence. I have done it perfectly so many times, but today I just could not. Keanu nodded, taking a sip of his own tea before responding. The scene is not working. Anna's face fell further, interpreting his words as confirmation of her failure. Even Keanu thought she was not good enough. Even the kindest person in Hollywood could see that she did not belong here. But Keanu continued, his voice gentle and steady. Not because of you. The choreography is fighting against your instincts. I watched your work in Blonde, saw how you move. You have the grace of a dancer, the fluidity of someone who understands that movement is expression. But this sequence was designed for someone who fights like a soldier. You fight like a storm. Anna looked up, surprised by the poetry in his observation. No one had ever described her that way before. Most people saw her beauty first and assumed that was all there was to see. But Keanu was looking at something deeper, something she had spent years trying to get others to notice. I talked to the director already, Keanu continued, and the stunt coordinator. I have an idea for how we might approach this differently, but I want to understand what is really happening first, not because you owe me an explanation. You do not owe anyone anything, but because carrying weight alone makes it heavier. I learned that the hard way. Something about his words, about the quiet understanding in his eyes, broke through the walls Anna had built around herself. She found herself telling him everything. About Elvis, her rescue dog who had been her only constant companion through the loneliness of building a career in a foreign country. About the message from the veterinarian that morning, the words that had shattered her focus and filled her mind with images of her beloved friend suffering alone. About the guilt she felt for being here instead of at the hospital, for choosing work over love, for being the kind of person who could not even take a day off when her heart was breaking. Keanu listened without interrupting, his attention complete and unwavering. When Anna finished, tears streaming down her face despite her efforts to contain them, he spoke with a simplicity that cut through all pretense. Grief does not pause for call times. Anyone who expects otherwise has forgotten what it means to be human. Anna wiped her eyes, grateful for his understanding but still feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. But there are over 100 people here whose jobs depend on this production. There are schedules and budgets and expectations. I cannot just fall apart because my dog is sick. Keanu leaned forward slightly, his expression serious but kind. You are not falling apart. You are being human in an industry that often forgets humans are at the center of everything we create. The question is not whether you can push through this. You have already proven that you can. The question is whether there is a better way forward that honors both your commitment to this film and your need to be present with what you are feeling. Anna shook her head, confused. I do not understand what you mean. Keanu smiled, a gentle expression that transformed his often serious face. I mean that we are going to fix this, not by asking you to pretend you are fine, not by forcing you into choreography that does not fit who you are. We are going to redesign the scene from the ground up. We are going to build something that works with your instincts instead of against them, and we are going to do it together. But how? Anna asked. The sequence is already designed, the director approved it. David has been working on it for months. Keanu stood up, his decision clearly made. David is brilliant, but he is not infallible, and the director wants what is best for the film. What is best for the film is a sequence that showcases what makes you unique, not a sequence that forces you to be something you are not. Let me talk to them. Let me show them what I see when I watch you move. He paused at the door, turning back to look at her with an expression of complete sincerity. I believe in you, Anna, not because I am being polite, not because it is what people say in these situations. I believe in you because I have watched your work and I have seen your heart. You have something special, and I am not going to let one difficult day convince you otherwise. Anna felt something shift inside her chest. It was not a solution to her problems. Elvis was still sick. The sequence was still a disaster. The crew was still whispering about her failures, but for the first time since that morning, she did not feel completely alone. Someone had seen her struggling and instead of looking away, had stepped closer. She did not know yet what Keanu was planning. She did not know that the next 24 hours would transform not just the scene, but her entire understanding of what it meant to work in this industry. She did not know that his kindness would ripple outward in ways neither of them could predict. All she knew was that someone believed in her, and sometimes, in the darkest moments, that is enough to keep going. Keanu walked back onto the set with a quiet determination that those who knew him well had learned to recognize. It was the same energy he brought to his most challenging stunts, the same focus he applied when something mattered deeply to him. He found David and the director standing together, reviewing footage from the failed rehearsals with expressions of barely concealed frustration. "Excuse me," Keanu said, approaching them with respect but without hesitation. "I have a proposal. I know it is not my place to interfere with your production, but I think I can help." The director looked up, surprised by the offer but willing to listen. Keanu was not just a star. He was a producer on this project, someone whose opinion carried significant weight. More importantly, he was someone whose judgment had proven reliable over decades of successful collaborations. "What do you have in mind?" the director asked. Keanu took a breath, choosing his words carefully. The sequence is not working because it was designed for a different kind of performer. Anna is not a soldier. She is a dancer. Her strength is fluidity and grace, not rigid precision. If we redesign the choreography to follow her natural movement patterns instead of forcing her into predetermined marks, I believe we will get something far more powerful than what we originally planned. David crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. "That would take days to redesign. We do not have days." "We have tonight," Keanu replied. "I will stay and work with her myself. We will rebuild it from scratch, using her instincts as the foundation. If it does not work by morning, we go back to the original plan. But I think you will be surprised by what she is capable of when she is allowed to move the way her body wants to move." The director and David exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, David spoke. "You really believe this will work?" Keanu nodded. "I do, but more importantly, I believe in her. Sometimes that is all someone needs, a chance to prove themselves on their own terms." The decision was made. They would try it Keanu's way, and by morning everything would be different. But Anna did not know any of this yet. She was still in her trailer, holding her phone, waiting for news about Elvis, trying to find the strength to face the set again. She did not know that outside, a quiet revolution was beginning. A revolution built not on demands or ultimatums, but on something far more powerful. Belief, patience, and the radical act of treating a struggling person with kindness instead of criticism. The afternoon light had shifted from golden to amber, casting long shadows across the studio floor where markers still lay in their precise positions, waiting for someone to hit them correctly. The crew had dispersed for an extended break, their whispered conversations carrying through hallways and dressing rooms like a quiet storm that everyone could feel but no one acknowledged directly. Anna remained in her trailer, suspended between the need to return to set and the desperate wish to be anywhere else in the world. Her phone had not rung again. The silence from the veterinary hospital was somehow worse than bad news would have been. At least bad news was definite. At least bad news allowed you to begin the process of acceptance. This waiting was a special kind of torture, a limbo where hope and dread existed in equal measure, each one feeding the other in an endless cycle that exhausted the spirit. She had tried to call twice, but reached only voicemail. The receptionist had promised that the veterinarian would contact her as soon as there was any update. Until then, Anna was left with her imagination, which painted increasingly terrible pictures of Elvis suffering alone in a sterile room, wondering why she had abandoned him when he needed her most. A knock at the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. She expected it to be an assistant director, calling her back to set for another attempt at the sequence she had already failed so spectacularly. Instead, when she opened the door, she found Keanu standing there with a different energy than before. There was purpose in his posture, a quiet excitement in his eyes that she did not understand. "Something has changed," he said. "Can you come with me? There are some people who want to talk to you." Anna hesitated, fear flickering across her features. If this was about replacing her, if the studio had decided she was too much of a liability, she wanted to know now rather than walking into an ambush of executives and lawyers. Keanu seemed to read her thoughts. "It is nothing bad, I promise. Actually, I think it might be something good, but you need to see for yourself." She followed him out of the trailer and across the studio lot, her heart beating with a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. They walked past the main soundstage where the failed rehearsals had taken place, past the production offices where decisions about her future were probably being discussed at this very moment, past the security checkpoint, where guards nodded respectfully at Keanu's familiar face. Finally, they arrived at a smaller rehearsal space that Anna had never visited before. It was usually reserved for private choreography sessions, a place where performers could work without the pressure of a full crew watching their every move. Through the window, Anna could see David, the stunt coordinator, standing with two of his best assistants, all of them studying a whiteboard covered with diagrams she did not recognize. "Before we go in," Keanu said, stopping her with a gentle hand on her arm, "I want to explain something. What happens in there, it only works if you are willing to trust the process. I know that is a lot to ask after the day you have had, but I am asking anyway." Anna looked at him, searching his face for any sign of insincerity, any hint that this was some kind of elaborate consolation prize designed to make her feel better before delivering the real blow. She found nothing but genuine warmth and steady conviction. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "We barely know each other. You have no obligation to help me. You could have watched me fail and gone back to your hotel without getting involved. Why do you care?" Keanu was silent for a moment, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. When he spoke, his voice was lower, more personal than before. "Because someone did it for me once. When I was at my lowest point, when I could barely remember why I had chosen this profession, when grief had hollowed me out so completely that I felt like a ghost pretending to be alive. Someone saw me struggling, and instead of looking away, they stepped closer. They did not try to fix me. They just made sure I knew I was not alone. I made a promise to myself that day. Whenever I had the chance to do the same for someone else, I would take it. This is me keeping that promise." Anna felt tears threatening again, but these were different from the ones she had been fighting all day. These came from a place of gratitude rather than grief, from the unexpected experience of being truly seen by another person. "I do not know what to say," she whispered. "You do not have to say anything," Keanu replied. "Just come inside and keep an open mind. The rest will take care of itself." They entered the rehearsal space together, and immediately Anna noticed that something was different. The atmosphere was not tense or judgmental. David looked up from his whiteboard with an expression she had never seen on his face before. It was not impatience or frustration. It was curiosity. It was creative excitement. "Anna," David said, his voice carrying none of the sharpness from earlier, "I owe you an apology." Anna blinked, certain she had misheard. David never apologized. David was famous for his perfectionism, his refusal to accept excuses, his belief that any performer worth working with should be able to meet his standards without modification. "I have been approaching this all wrong," David continued. "I designed the sequence based on what I thought an action heroine should look like. Hard, precise, military. But that is not who your character is, and it is not who you are. Keanu helped me see that I was trying to fit you into a box instead of building a box around you." He gestured to the whiteboard, where the diagrams showed a completely different approach to the fight sequence. Instead of rigid positions and predetermined marks, there were flowing lines and circular patterns that suggested movement rather than dictating it. "This is what we want to try," David explained. "Instead of hitting specific marks, you will have zones, areas where you need to end up but with freedom in how you get there. Instead of counting beats, you will feel the rhythm. We will choreograph around your natural movement patterns instead of against them." Anna studied the diagrams, her mind struggling to process this unexpected turn. Is this even possible? The scene is supposed to be shot in a single take. Does not that require exact precision? "It requires a different kind of precision," Keanu interjected. "The precision of connection rather than position. Your scene partner will adapt to you in real time, responding to your movements rather than expecting you to hit predetermined positions. It is more like a dance than a fight, and you already know how to dance." David nodded in agreement. "We will need to rehearse extensively. The two of you will need to develop a communication that goes beyond choreography. But I have seen this approach work before. It creates something more organic, more alive than traditional fight sequences. And honestly, after watching the footage from today, I think it could be extraordinary." Anna felt hope flickering in her chest, fragile but real. "You really think this can work?" "I know it can," David said, "but it requires complete commitment from both of you. We are talking about an all-night rehearsal session, hours of work before tomorrow's shoot. Are you willing to do that?" Anna thought about Elvis, about the phone that might ring at any moment with news she was not prepared to receive. She thought about the exhaustion already weighing on her body and mind. She thought about all the reasons this might fail, all the ways she might disappoint these people who were offering her a second chance she had not earned. But then she looked at Keanu, who was watching her with patient confidence. He had put his reputation on the line for her. He had convinced David and the director to try something completely different based on his belief in her abilities. If she walked away now, she would be proving all the whispers right. She would be confirming that she was not ready, not capable, not enough. "I am willing," she said. "I will do whatever it takes." Keanu smiled, that gentle expression that transformed his serious features into something warm and approachable. "I knew you would say that. But before we start, there is something else we need to take care of." He pulled out his phone and dialed a number, putting it on speaker so Anna could hear. After 2 rings, a woman's voice answered. "Cedar Grove Veterinary Hospital, how can I help you?" Anna's breath caught in her throat. Keanu spoke calmly into the phone. "Hello, my name is Keanu Reeves. I am a friend of Ana de Armas who has a patient there named Elvis. We were wondering if we could get an update on his condition. And if possible, we would like to arrange a video call so Ana can see him. I understand you are busy, but it would mean a great deal to both of us." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Anna could imagine the receptionist trying to process the fact that Keanu Reeves was calling about a dog. Then the woman's voice returned, slightly starstruck but professional. "Of course, Mr. Reeves. Let me check with the veterinarian and call you back within 10 minutes. Is this a good number to reach you?" "It is, thank you so much." Keanu ended the call and looked at Anna, whose eyes had filled with tears again. "You did not have to do that," she said, her voice breaking. "I know," he replied simply, "but you needed to see him, and sometimes we need a little help asking for what we need." David, watching this exchange with an expression of quiet respect, cleared his throat gently. "Why do we not take a short break? Get some water, use the restroom, clear your heads. When the call comes through, take all the time you need. The choreography can wait another 30 minutes. Anna nodded, overwhelmed by the kindness being shown to her from all directions. She had expected criticism and received compassion. She had expected judgment and received understanding. She had expected to be alone in her struggle and instead found herself surrounded by people who wanted to help her succeed. 10 minutes later, Keanu's phone rang. The veterinarian appeared on a video call, standing in a small room with soft lighting and comfortable blankets. And there, sleeping peacefully in a bed designed for recovering animals, was Elvis. "He stabilized about an hour ago," the veterinarian explained, turning the camera so Anna could see her dog more clearly. "He is still critical, but he is fighting. His vital signs have improved significantly since this morning. I would say there is real reason for hope now." Anna pressed her hand to her mouth, tears streaming freely down her face. Elvis's chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, his expression peaceful in sleep. He was alive, he was fighting, and somehow knowing that, she felt her own strength beginning to return. "Hi, baby," she whispered to the screen. "I am so sorry I am not there, but I am coming as soon as I can. You just keep fighting, okay? Keep fighting for me." As if he could hear her voice, Elvis's tail gave a single weak wag. The veterinarian smiled. "He knows you are with him," she said. "Animals understand more than we give them credit for. I will call you immediately if anything changes. For now, try to focus on what you need to do. He is in good hands." The call ended, and Anna stood in silence for a long moment, processing the relief that flooded through her body. When she finally looked up, Keanu was watching her with that same patient understanding that had defined every interaction they had shared today. "Ready?" he asked. Anna wiped her eyes, took a deep breath, and nodded. "Ready." The long night was about to begin, and neither of them knew yet just how much it would change everything. The rehearsal space transformed as the sun set, its warm amber light replaced by the cool white glow of studio lamps that created a world without shadows. Outside, the city of Los Angeles began to wind down, its relentless energy softening into the hum of evening traffic and distant sirens. But inside this small room, a different kind of energy was just beginning to build. An energy of focus, creativity, and shared purpose that felt almost electric. Anna had expected the rehearsal to be a grueling process, a high-pressure race against the clock to learn a completely new sequence before the cameras rolled tomorrow. She had prepared herself for exhaustion, for frustration, for the possibility that this new idea, as hopeful as it seemed, might not actually work. What she had not prepared for was joy. The first hour was spent not on choreography, but on conversation. Keanu and David sat with Anna, asking her questions about her character. What is she feeling in this moment? What is her goal? Is she fighting to survive, to protect, or to escape? Is she angry, afraid, or determined? They were not just interested in what she would do, but why she would do it. This was a revelation for Anna. In her experience, action sequences were about hitting marks and looking convincing. They were physical puzzles to be solved, not emotional journeys to be expressed. But Keanu insisted that the two were inseparable. Every fight is a story, he told her. Every punch, every block, every movement is a word in a sentence that tells the audience who this person is. You are not just hitting marks. You are telling the audience her secrets with your body. David, to his credit, embraced this philosophy completely. He had abandoned his rigid diagrams and was now working with a kind of creative fluidity that Anna had never seen from him before. He would suggest a general movement, a transition from one position to another, and then ask Anna, what feels natural here? Where does your body want to go? They started slowly. Anna stood in the center of the room, her scene partner opposite her, while Keanu and David observed. They asked her to simply move, to react to her partner's advances without thinking about choreography. At first, her movements were hesitant, constrained by years of training that had taught her to wait for instruction. Forget everything you have been taught, Keanu said gently. Forget the marks. Forget the counts. Just listen to your instincts. If you feel like dodging, dodge. If you feel like striking, strike. Do not think, just be. Something in his voice gave her permission to let go. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and thought about Elvis. She thought about his fight for life, about her own fight to prove herself, about the character's desperate struggle for freedom. And when she opened her eyes, she was no longer Anna the actress. She was the ballerina. Her movements became fluid, graceful, yet incredibly powerful. She used her dance background not as a series of pretty poses, but as a foundation for a unique fighting style that was both elegant and lethal. She would spin out of a strike, using her momentum to transition into a takedown that was as beautiful as it was brutal. She would use her flexibility to evade a punch and counter with a kick that seemed to come from nowhere. David watched with widening eyes, a look of pure creative excitement on his face. He would stop her occasionally, not to correct her, but to refine what she was already doing naturally. He would suggest a slight change in footwork to maximize her power, or a different angle for a block that would be more effective. He was not imposing his vision on her. He was helping her discover her own. Keanu, meanwhile, acted as a kind of emotional guide. He would watch a sequence and then say something like, in that moment, I see her fear. Can you show me what it looks like when she finds her courage again? Or, I love that transition, but it feels a little too perfect. Can you make it messier, more desperate? They built the sequence together, piece by piece, not as a series of moves to be memorized, but as a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. The opening was about survival, with Anna's movements quick and defensive. The middle was about adaptation, as she began to find her rhythm and turn her opponent's strength against him. The final section was about dominance, as she took control of the fight and expressed her character's unbreakable will to live. By midnight, they had a complete 4-minute sequence that was unlike anything Anna had ever seen or performed. It was raw, it was emotional, it was uniquely hers. It was a perfect fusion of her dance training, her acting instincts, and the brutal efficiency required for a John Wick universe film. Now, Keanu said, let us run it from the top. No stopping, no corrections, just you and your partner telling the story. The music started, a driving electronic score that had been composed for the original sequence but somehow fit this new one even better. Anna took a deep breath and began to move. What happened next was magic. She did not just perform the choreography, she inhabited it. Every movement flowed into the next with a seamless grace that was breathtaking to watch. She was not just fighting an opponent. She was dancing with him, a deadly ballet where every step had a purpose, every gesture a meaning. When the final beat of the music hit, she stood in a powerful pose, her chest heaving, her eyes blazing with an intensity that was both terrifying and beautiful. The small group in the rehearsal room, David and his assistants, were silent for a long moment. Then they broke into spontaneous applause, not the polite clapping of industry professionals, but the genuine, enthusiastic applause of people who had just witnessed something truly special. David walked over to her, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and awe. That was it, he said, his voice thick with emotion. That was the scene I have been trying to create for months. I just did not know how to get there until tonight. "You are incredible, Anna, absolutely incredible." Anna felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with physical exertion. It was the warmth of validation, of being seen and appreciated for who she was, not for who others wanted her to be. She looked at Keanu, who was smiling his quiet, gentle smile from the edge of the room. He walked over and handed her a bottle of water. "How do you feel?" Tired, she admitted with a laugh, but also alive. "More alive than I have felt in a long time. Thank you, Keanu, for everything." "We are not done yet," he said, his expression becoming serious again. "What you just did was amazing. But tomorrow, when you are back on the main set with the full crew and the cameras and the pressure, the memory of this morning's failure will be in your head. It will be whispering to you, trying to make you doubt yourself. We need to do something about that tonight." Anna frowned, not understanding. "What do you mean?" Keanu pulled out his phone again. "I had a conversation with your veterinarian a little while ago. Elvis is stable and resting comfortably, but there is a webcam in his room for monitoring purposes. She gave me the login information. She said you could watch him sleep for as long as you need to." He handed the phone to her. On the screen was a live video feed from the veterinary hospital. Anna could see Elvis curled up on his soft bed, his chest rising and falling in a steady, peaceful rhythm. He was safe. He was being cared for, and he was going to be okay. Anna sat down on the floor, her back against the wall, and watched her dog sleep. She did not say anything. She did not need to. She just watched, letting the image of his peaceful slumber replace the images of fear and doubt that had been plaguing her all day. Keanu sat down beside her, not too close, but close enough for her to know he was there. David and his assistants quietly packed up their equipment, leaving the two of them alone in the soft light of the rehearsal studio. For nearly an hour, they sat in silence, two people from different generations and different backgrounds, connected by a shared understanding of grief, kindness, and the quiet courage it takes to be human in a world that often demands we be something more. Finally, Anna looked away from the screen and turned to Keanu. Her eyes were clear, her expression calm and centered. "I am ready," she said. "I am ready for tomorrow." Keanu nodded. "I know you are. You have been ready all along. You just needed to remember how to fight like yourself." As they stood up to leave, Anna noticed something she had not seen before. On the back of Keanu's hand, there were faint scars, the kind of marks left by years of stunt work and fight choreography. They were reminders of past battles, past struggles, past moments of pain that had healed but not disappeared. She looked at her own hands, which were red and calloused from the night's rehearsal. She realized that these marks were not signs of failure. They were signs of effort. They were evidence of the work it takes to create something beautiful out of something difficult. They walked out of the rehearsal studio and into the cool night air. The city was quiet now, the streets mostly empty. In a few hours, the sun would rise and she would have to face the set again. But this time, she would not be walking onto that set alone. She would be carrying with her the memory of this night, the kindness of a stranger, and the newfound confidence that came from knowing that sometimes missing your mark is not a mistake. Sometimes it is the first step toward finding a better one, a mark that is truly, completely your own. The hours between midnight and dawn have a quality that is difficult to describe to anyone who has not experienced them in pursuit of something meaningful. Time moves differently in those hours. It stretches and compresses in ways that defy logic, moments of intense focus lasting what feels like seconds, while brief pauses for rest seem to extend into small eternities. Anna discovered this truth as the night deepened around her, as the rehearsal space became a kind of sacred ground where something new was being born. She had thought they were finished after the successful run-through. She had thought the hard work was complete and all that remained was rest before the morning shoot. But Keanu had other ideas. He understood something that Anna was only beginning to grasp. Technical proficiency was only half of the equation. The other half was mental preparation, the cultivation of a mindset that would allow her to access her best work under the most challenging circumstances. "Let us sit for a moment," Keanu said, gesturing to a quiet corner of the rehearsal space where two chairs had been set up facing each other. "There is something I want to share with you, something that might help tomorrow." Anna followed him, her body pleasantly exhausted from the hours of physical work, her mind curious about what he might say next. She had learned to trust his instincts over the course of this remarkable night. Every suggestion he had made, every adjustment he had proposed, had proven valuable beyond her expectations. They sat facing each other, the dim light of the rehearsal space creating an atmosphere of intimacy and trust. Keanu was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant, as if he were reaching back through years of memory to find the right starting point for what he wanted to say. "I want to tell you about the worst day of my life," he began, his voice soft but steady. "Or rather, one of the worst days. There have been several, but this one is relevant to what you are going through." Anna nodded, sensing the weight of what was coming, feeling honored that he would share something so personal with her. "It was 1999, Keanu continued. I was working on a film, trying to function like a normal person, trying to pretend that my world had not completely fallen apart. My daughter had been stillborn just months before. My relationship with her mother, the woman I loved more than anything, was crumbling under the weight of our shared grief. I was not sleeping. I was barely eating. I was going through the motions of being alive without actually feeling alive." He paused, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that was both painful and beautiful. "One day on set, I could not remember my lines, lines I had known perfectly the day before, lines I had rehearsed hundreds of times. They simply vanished from my mind, replaced by a void that terrified me. The director was frustrated. The crew was impatient. I could hear people whispering about whether I was reliable, whether I could finish the film, whether they had made a mistake in casting me." Anna felt her heart ache for him, recognizing her own experience in his words. "What did you do?" she asked softly. "I wanted to run," Keanu admitted. "I wanted to disappear, to escape the shame and the pressure and the impossible weight of everyone's expectations. But then something happened. The cinematographer, a woman named Mary who had been in the industry for decades, walked over to me during a break. She did not say anything at first. She just stood beside me, looking out at the set, letting the silence exist between us without trying to fill it." He smiled slightly at the memory, a gentle expression that softened his features. "Finally, she said something I have never forgotten. She said, 'Keanu, grief is not a problem to be solved. It is a journey to be walked, and you do not have to walk it perfectly. You just have to keep walking. Some days you will stumble, some days you will fall. But as long as you keep getting up, you are doing exactly what you need to do.'" Anna felt tears forming in her eyes, moved by the simple wisdom of these words. "That day," Keanu continued, "I did not magically recover. I still struggled with my lines. I still felt the weight of my loss pressing down on every moment. But something had shifted inside me. I stopped trying to be perfect. I stopped trying to hide my pain. I let myself be human, flawed, and hurting, and doing my best anyway. And somehow that was enough. The scenes we shot that day were some of the most authentic of the entire film." He leaned forward slightly, his gaze holding hers with compassionate intensity. "Tomorrow, when you walk onto that set, you will not be a perfect version of yourself. You will be tired from tonight. You will be worried about Elvis. You will remember the failures of yesterday and wonder if they will repeat themselves. But none of that matters. What matters is that you show up as exactly who you are, with all your fears and doubts and imperfections, and you do the work anyway. That is what courage looks like. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it." Anna was silent for a long moment, absorbing his words, feeling them settle into her heart like seeds that would grow into something stronger over time. "How do you do it?" she finally asked. "How do you keep going after everything you have been through? How do you stay so kind when the world has given you so many reasons to be bitter?" Keanu considered the question carefully before answering. "I made a choice," he said. "A long time ago, after the worst of my losses, I made a conscious decision about the kind of person I wanted to be. I could not control what happened to me. I could not bring back the people I had lost or undo the pain I had experienced, but I could control how I responded. I could choose kindness over bitterness. I could choose connection over isolation. I could choose to use my pain as a source of compassion rather than a justification for cruelty." He paused, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his features. "It is not easy," he admitted. "Some days it is incredibly hard. Some days I want to give up, to stop caring, to protect myself by closing off from the world. But I have learned that the moments when kindness is hardest are often the moments when it matters most. Anyone can be kind when life is easy. The real test is being kind when life is breaking your heart." Anna thought about the day she had just experienced. The fear, the failure, the whispered judgments of the crew. She thought about how easy it would have been for Keanu to ignore her struggle, to focus on his own cameo and leave her to figure things out on her own. Instead, he had stepped into her pain and helped her find a way through it. "You could have just watched me fail," she said. "You had no obligation to help me. Why did you choose to get involved?" Keanu smiled, that gentle expression that had become so familiar to her over the course of this long night. Because I remember what it felt like to struggle alone, he said simply. And I remember how much it meant when someone finally saw me, really saw me, and decided to help. That moment changed my life. It showed me that even in the darkest times, there are people who choose compassion over convenience, connection over distance. I want to be one of those people. I want to leave the world a little better than I found it, one small act of kindness at a time. Anna felt something shift inside her, a fundamental reordering of her understanding of success and failure, strength and vulnerability. She had always believed that the path to the top required armor, required hiding her weaknesses, required projecting an image of invincible confidence. But Keanu was showing her a different way. A way that embraced imperfection, that found strength in vulnerability, that understood that true power came not from never falling, but from always getting back up. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of their conversation settling around them like a warm blanket. Outside, the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the sky, transforming the deep black of night into shades of purple and gray. "We should get some rest," Keanu finally said. "You have a big day ahead of you." Anna nodded, suddenly aware of how tired she was, how much the night had taken from her physically even as it had given her so much emotionally. But as she stood to leave, she felt compelled to say one more thing. "Keanu," she said, pausing at the door, "I do not know how to thank you for tonight. You did not just help me with the choreography. You helped me understand something about myself, about what it means to be strong. I will never forget this." Keanu stood as well, his expression warm and genuine. "You do not need to thank me," he said. "Just pass it on. Someday you will encounter someone who is struggling, someone who needs exactly the kind of help you needed today. When that happens, remember this night. Remember how it felt to be seen and supported. And do the same for them. That is how we change the world, not through grand gestures, but through small acts of kindness that ripple outward in ways we can never predict." Anna nodded, feeling the truth of his words resonating deep within her. She would remember. She would pass it on. And in doing so, she would become part of a chain of compassion that stretched back through Keanu's life to the cinematographer who had helped him, and forward into a future she could not yet imagine. As she walked to her trailer to catch a few hours of sleep before the morning shoot, Anna felt different than she had the day before. The fear was still there. The worry about Elvis was still present. The memory of yesterday's failure still lingered at the edges of her consciousness. But alongside these familiar companions was something new. A quiet confidence that had nothing to do with perfection and everything to do with presence. A willingness to show up as herself, imperfect and uncertain, and doing her best anyway. She checked her phone one last time before closing her eyes. There was a message from the veterinary hospital. Elvis was stable. His condition was continuing to improve. The veterinarian was cautiously optimistic about his recovery. Anna smiled, tears of relief sliding down her cheeks. She whispered a quiet thank you to the universe, to Keanu, to everyone who had helped her through this impossible day. Then she closed her eyes and let sleep take her, knowing that tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but trusting that she had everything she needed to face them. In a few hours, the sun would rise, the cameras would roll, and Ana de Armas would show the world what she was truly capable of. Not because she was perfect, but because she was present. Not because she had no fear, but because she had found the courage to move forward anyway. And somewhere in the shadows of the set, Keanu Reeves would be watching, his quiet smile a testament to the power of believing in someone when they have forgotten how to believe in themselves. Morning arrived with a gentleness that felt almost intentional, as if the universe itself understood the significance of this day and wanted to ease Anna into it with care. The light that filtered through the windows of her trailer was soft and golden, different from the harsh fluorescent glare that had illuminated yesterday's failures. Anna woke slowly, her body stiff from the long night of rehearsal, her mind surprisingly clear despite the minimal sleep. For a moment she lay still, listening to the sounds of the studio coming to life around her. Distant voices called out instructions. Equipment rolled across concrete floors. Doors opened and closed with the purposeful rhythm of a production preparing for an important day. Yesterday, these sounds had filled her with dread. Today, they felt almost welcoming, like the familiar music of a world she had chosen to inhabit. She reached for her phone, her heart beating faster as she checked for updates from the veterinary hospital. The message waiting for her was better than she had dared to hope. Elvis had eaten breakfast for the first time in 3 days. His energy was returning. The veterinarian believed he had turned a corner and was now firmly on the path to recovery. Anna pressed the phone to her chest, overwhelmed with gratitude, feeling as if the weight she had been carrying had suddenly been cut in half. She showered and dressed with unusual care, taking time to center herself before facing the set. She thought about everything Keanu had told her the night before, about grief being a journey rather than a problem to be solved, about courage being the willingness to move forward despite fear, about kindness being most powerful precisely when it was most difficult. These ideas had planted themselves in her mind like seeds, already beginning to sprout into something that would grow and strengthen over time. When she finally stepped out of her trailer and walked toward the main soundstage, Anna noticed something different immediately. The energy on set had shifted. Yesterday, there had been tension in the air, a collective holding of breath, a sense that everyone was waiting for something to go wrong. Today, there was something closer to anticipation, a buzzing excitement that seemed to radiate from the crew members she passed. She soon understood why. Word had spread about the previous night. Someone had seen Keanu and David working with her in the rehearsal space. Someone else had heard about the completely redesigned sequence. The whispers were different now. Instead of doubt and criticism, there was curiosity and hope. People wanted to see what had been created in those long hours after midnight. David approached her first, his expression warm and encouraging in a way she had never seen before yesterday. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice carrying genuine concern rather than professional obligation. "Ready," Anna replied, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "Nervous but ready." David nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Good. Nervous means you care, and caring is what separates good performances from great ones. Just remember what we worked on last night. Trust your instincts. Tell the story with your body. The marks will take care of themselves." Anna thanked him and continued walking toward the set, passing crew members who offered smiles and nods of encouragement. She realized that the atmosphere had changed not just because of what had happened in the rehearsal room, but because of how Keanu had handled the situation publicly. He had not blamed her for yesterday's failures. He had not distanced himself from the problem. Instead, he had taken responsibility for finding a solution, had put his own reputation on the line to advocate for a different approach. His faith in her had given others permission to believe as well. She found Keanu standing near the monitors, talking quietly with the director. When he saw her approaching, he excused himself and walked over to meet her. His expression was calm and confident, but his eyes held a warmth that told her he understood exactly what she was feeling. "Big day," he said simply. "The biggest," Anna agreed. "I just wanted to say thank you again, for everything. I do not know if I would be standing here right now if it were not for you." Keanu shook his head gently. "You would be standing here," he said. "You might have taken a different path to get here, but you would have found your way eventually. You have too much talent and too much heart to stay down for long. All I did was help you get back up a little faster." Anna felt tears threatening again, but she blinked them back. She could not afford to ruin her makeup before the shoot. Instead, she simply nodded, hoping he could see in her eyes everything she could not put into words. The director called for everyone to take their positions. Anna walked to her opening mark, feeling the familiar flutter of nervousness in her stomach. But this time, the nervousness was different. It was not the paralyzing fear of yesterday, the terror of being exposed as a fraud. It was the excited anticipation of an athlete before a big game, the energizing tension that comes from caring deeply about something and wanting to do it justice. Her scene partner took his position across from her, and she was relieved to see that his expression was supportive rather than wary. The medic had cleared him to work despite the accidental hit yesterday, and he had apparently heard about the new approach to the sequence. He gave her a small nod of encouragement, a silent communication that said, "I am with you. Let us do this together." The cameras began to roll. The director called for quiet on set. Anna closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself, connecting with the character she was about to embody. She thought about the ballerina's story, her desperate fight for freedom, her refusal to be defeated by circumstances beyond her control. She thought about Elvis, fighting for his life in a veterinary hospital. She thought about Keanu, fighting through decades of grief to remain open and kind. She thought about herself, fighting through fear and doubt to stand on this mark at this moment. Then the director called action, and Anna began to move. What happened next would become the stuff of Hollywood legend, a story that would be told and retold in interviews and behind-the-scenes documentaries for years to come. Anna did not just perform the choreography. She transcended it. Every movement flowed from her body with a natural grace that made the violence beautiful, that transformed a fight sequence into a work of art. She did not think about the marks. She did not count the beats. She simply existed in the moment, responding to her partner with an intuitive connection that made every exchange feel spontaneous and real. When she spun out of a strike, her body arced through the air with the elegance of a dancer. When she delivered a devastating kick, the power came not just from her muscles, but from somewhere deeper, from the emotional core of a character who had everything to lose and everything to fight for. The sequence lasted 4 minutes and 12 seconds. It was shot in a single continuous take, just as originally planned. But it was nothing like what had been originally planned. It was better. It was alive in a way that choreography rarely achieves, breathing with authentic emotion, pulsing with genuine stakes. When the director finally called cut, there was a moment of absolute silence on set. It was the kind of silence that follows something transcendent, the pause that occurs when people need a moment to process what they have just witnessed. Anna stood in her final position, her chest heaving, her body covered in sweat, waiting for the verdict. Then the silence broke, and the set erupted in applause. It was not the polite clapping of professionals acknowledging a competent performance. It was the full-throated, spontaneous celebration of people who had just witnessed something special. Crew members were cheering. The camera operators were grinning. The director was on his feet, his face split by a smile that seemed to stretch from ear to ear. Anna felt hands patting her back, voices congratulating her from all directions. But she was looking for only one face in the crowd. When she found Keanu standing quietly near the monitors, his expression told her everything she needed to know. He was not celebrating loudly like the others. He was simply smiling, that gentle, warm smile that had become so familiar to her over the past 24 hours. And in his eyes, she saw something that meant more to her than all the applause in the world. She saw pride. She made her way through the crowd toward him, accepting congratulations along the way but never losing sight of her destination. When she finally reached him, she did not know what to say. Words seemed inadequate to express the gratitude and respect she felt. But Keanu spoke first. He leaned close to her ear, his voice quiet enough that only she could hear. "You did not just hit the mark today," he said. "You moved it. You showed everyone what is possible when we stop trying to fit people into boxes and start building boxes around who they actually are. I am proud of you, Anna, not because you were perfect, but because you were brave enough to be yourself." Anna felt tears streaming down her face, and this time she did not try to stop them. She threw her arms around Keanu in a hug that probably surprised both of them. He returned the embrace, his arms steady and reassuring around her. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me, for believing in me, for showing me what kindness can do." Keanu pulled back slightly, his hands still resting on her shoulders. "Now go call your dog," he said, a twinkle of humor in his eyes. "He is waiting to hear from you." Anna laughed through her tears and nodded. She turned to walk toward her trailer, but paused after a few steps and looked back. "Keanu," she said, "I will pass it on. I promise. Whenever I have the chance to help someone the way you helped me, I will take it." Keanu nodded, his expression serious but warm. "I know you will," he said. "That is exactly why I knew you were worth believing in." 3 months later, the premiere of Ballerina was everything Anna had dreamed it would be. The red carpet stretched out before her, lined with photographers and fans and fellow industry professionals who had come to celebrate the film's release. The reviews were already pouring in, and they were spectacular. Critics praised her performance, calling it a revelation, a star-making turn that announced Ana de Armas as a true action icon. But what mattered most to Anna was not the critical acclaim or the box office projections. What mattered was the moment she took the stage to speak before the film's screening. She looked out at the audience, at the familiar faces and the strangers, at the industry that had tested her and challenged her and ultimately embraced her. And she told them a story. She told them about the morning when everything fell apart, about the missed marks and the whispered criticism and the overwhelming fear of failure. She told them about a phone call that shattered her focus, about a dog named Elvis who was fighting for his life. And she told them about Keanu Reeves. She described how he had noticed her struggle when everyone else was focused on the problem she was creating, how he had brought her tea and sat with her in silence, offering presents instead of platitudes, how he had convinced the director and the choreographer to try a completely different approach, putting his own reputation on the line for someone he barely knew. how he had stayed up all night helping her discover a way of moving that was uniquely her own. In Hollywood, Anna said, her voice steady but emotional, we often celebrate perfection. We admire the flawless take, the seamless performance, the appearance of effortless excellence. But tonight, I want to celebrate something different. I want to celebrate the people who see us fail and do not turn away. The people who believe that redesigning the scene is better than recasting the actor. The people who understand that kindness is not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. She looked at Keanu, who was sitting in the audience with his characteristic expression of slight embarrassment at being praised publicly. You taught me something that night, Anna continued. You taught me that missing your mark is not always a mistake. Sometimes it is information. Sometimes it is the universe telling you that the mark was wrong, that there is a better place for you to stand, a more authentic position from which to tell your story. You taught me that the bravest thing we can do is not to perform perfection, but to show up as ourselves, imperfect and uncertain and doing our best anyway. The audience applauded, moved by her words and the obvious emotion behind them. But Anna was not finished. I made a promise that night, she said. I promised that I would pass it on, that whenever I encountered someone struggling, I would remember how it felt to be seen and supported, and I would offer the same gift to them. So I want to make that promise again publicly to all of you. I want to commit to being the kind of person who steps closer when others step away, who offers belief when doubt would be easier, who remembers that behind every performance, every project, every public moment, there is a human being who is doing their best to navigate this complicated world. She paused, gathering herself for her final words. Keanu, she said, looking directly at him, you changed my life that night, not by being perfect, but by being kind. Not by having all the answers, but by asking the right questions. Not by fixing my problems, but by sitting with me in my pain and helping me find my own way through. Thank you for everything. The standing ovation that followed lasted nearly 3 minutes. But Anna barely noticed. She was too busy watching Keanu, who had finally stopped looking embarrassed and was simply smiling, that gentle, warm smile that she would never forget as long as she lived. As we come to the end of this story, I want to take a moment to reflect on what it teaches us about kindness, resilience, and the power of believing in one another. We live in a world that often rewards perfection and punishes failure. From a young age, we are taught to hide our weaknesses, to project confidence even when we feel uncertain, to never let them see us sweat. But this story reminds us that our moments of struggle are not shameful. They are human. They are the places where growth happens, where character is forged, where we discover what we are truly made of. Keanu Reeves did not help Anna because she was perfect. He helped her because she was struggling. He saw her pain, and instead of looking away, he stepped closer. He offered not solutions but presence, not answers but belief. And in doing so, he created space for her to find her own strength, her own way forward. This is the first lesson of this story. True kindness does not require us to fix people. It requires us to see them, to acknowledge their humanity, to let them know that they are not alone in their struggle. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for someone is simply to sit with them in their pain, offering the gift of our attention and our care. The second lesson is about the nature of strength. Anna thought she needed to be perfect to be worthy of her role. She thought that showing vulnerability was a sign of weakness. But Keanu showed her that real strength comes not from never falling, but from always getting back up. It comes from the courage to be imperfect, to fail publicly, to keep going anyway. The third lesson is about the ripple effects of kindness. Keanu helped Anna because someone had once helped him. Anna promised to pass it on, to help others the way she had been helped. This is how compassion spreads through the world, not through grand gestures, but through small acts of kindness that multiply and expand in ways we can never predict. And the final lesson is perhaps the most important of all. It is about the marks we set for ourselves and the marks others set for us. Anna missed her mark that first day, but in doing so, she discovered that the mark was wrong. It had been designed for someone else, someone she was not. When Keanu helped her find her own mark, her own way of moving through the scene, she created something far more powerful than the original plan. This is true in life as well as in film. So often, we try to hit marks that were never meant for us. We chase definitions of success that do not fit who we are. We contort ourselves to meet expectations that were designed for different people with different gifts. But the magic happens when we stop trying to fit into predetermined positions and start discovering where we naturally belong. So as you go forward from this story, I hope you will carry these lessons with you. Be kind, especially when it is difficult. Be brave enough to be imperfect. Pass on the compassion you receive. And most importantly, have the courage to find your own mark, your own position, your own unique way of moving through this world. Because the truth is, you were never meant to hit someone else's mark. You were meant to move it. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, be kind to one another. The world needs it now more than ever.